You had two choices. You could be a great stripper or be a great fighter. I think I was on a 2 or 3 week crime spree where literally every day I would go out and just commit crimes, like all day. Like that was my job, like I was going to work or something ridiculous. It felt good to steal stuff. Like I felt a rush of awesomeness. And I'm not gonna lie, I liked doing it. But it basically ended when I was robbing that Taco Bell, and I'd worked there. So I knew the inner workings of it, and I'd quit because it sucked. But I went back, and I know that sometimes they leave the window door open for the serving window, and I get there and it's totally open. So I literally just walk in. Phew, this is fantastic. The door to the safe is open, the door to the office is open. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. There's a huge bag of cash. I just stuffed it under my thing. I'm only in there maybe 7 or 8 minutes, but as soon as I come out, I can see cars come in and cops come in, and one of them knows it's me, literally yells my name, Frank, stop. I'm like, oh shit. And I run, and I ran, and this was a Taco Bell in front of a big department center. So I ran around the back, and behind it there's a creek. And it was frozen because it's the middle of winter. And I jumped into that creek to get away from the cops because I'm a criminal. And as soon as I hit, I could feel the money come out, and then I could also feel that I was stuck under ice, because when I came back up, the ice was there, because I went in at an angle. And so I had to kind of crawl in and push through the ice, and then I just started running. And I ran, and then I got far enough away to where I could see, they were blocked by the creek, they were having issues, they were kind of mobilizing. And then I was trying to figure out where I was gonna go, because there's really nowhere behind that. It was a giant field, followed by like a mountain range. And so, and then the tracks were right behind that. And I knew at the end of the tracks, there was an apartment complex where one of my friends lived. So I just started running down the tracks, running down the railroad tracks. And I still remember just the sound of my breath, because everything else had gotten super quiet. And I could just hear myself breathing. It was really like labored breathing. And then I was so cold, and it was so painful. The cold was so painful. Even when I was running, it was so painful. And then all of a sudden, it just got the warmest warm you've ever felt. It just felt so good. And I was suddenly at peace, and I was like, wow, this feels amazing. And I felt euphoric and wonderful. And I laid down on the tracks, and I was like, I'm just gonna take this tiny little nap, and then I'll pop right back up, keep running. And I laid down, and things started to kind of warm up, and then all of a sudden I went, holy shit, I have hypothermia. Because I'm a nerd and I read everything, and I read this is what happens when you have hypothermia. And so I popped up, and I just kept running again and running down the tracks and running. And I finally got to my friend's house. And I was just like this. I was like just shivering. And she brought me in and put me in some water, and took me 8-9 hours to get warm. But that was the coldest I have ever been. And probably the first time that I really faced death without, a conscious, effort. My stepdad, Joe, was very strict. He came straight out of Vietnam, and became an alcoholic, and really had trouble with his anger and his emotions, and he had a lot of distress because he came back and was very unwelcome for the things he did, and it made him really sad. And he disciplined us like military. Like it was, it seemed like they were psychological, attacks. The hardest one for me to withstand was just kneeling in the hallway with your nose to the wall for hours. And you're just crying because you're in so much pain. I felt funny all the time, and I felt anxious, and I felt scared to go home, and I didn't know where the safety was, where I could go and be safe. And so, each day was like, I'm running to school because I love being in school, because that's the only place where, I'm not in danger. And then, I'm tiptoeing home and trying to figure out like how to survive and not get, hurt or, in trouble. Joe had me live in the backyard for a couple weeks. And it was the first time where I really was hammered by by the situation. All the other stuff, you know, it really sucked, and I dealt with it. But you know, I was living in the backyard, and I had all my belongings there because it was like he wanted me to leave. He made me take everything out of my room and all my toys, and I just remember sitting there like under a tarp, under the frickin' clothesline, and just, you know, watching my Star Wars stuff get rained on, all my toys. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm living in the backyard. And that was, you know, that's what happened. That's what he would do. My whole life was like that, you know, up until a certain point. So I just never knew that things were weird. And it wasn't until, you know, I threw rocks at the train and got arrested and sent to juvenile hall, and was sitting in juvenile hall and talking to all these bad kids that I heard all the rumors about, and, you know, the kids that were expelled from school and the kids that, you know, that got arrested. I remember talking to the kids in the chow hall, and we were all sitting there, and I was like, yeah, what do you do about the, you know, the locking in the closet? And they're like, what the fuck? And I remember going back to my room and just sitting there going, wow, like maybe it's all up, you know, maybe it's not, you know, me, you know, or all me inside. And that's when, like, I was like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out. There were always teachers, though, that tried to help me. You know, that's why I teach now, and why I try to help people and mentor people, because, you know, there was Mrs. Tucker in the 3rd grade who knew there was something wrong. You know, she knew. And then when I started getting in trouble, she would send my schoolwork to the to the juvenile hall, and I would do it all and send it back. And she really tried to help me. I mean, the counselors kept telling me, listen, if you keep doing these crimes, they're going to take you from your home, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And it just kind of, it sunk in. And I was like, that's how I get out. That's how I do it. And so I was like, wow, I figured it out. And I just went all in. Like, I was just stealing anything, everything. I would just steal it. I didn't even need it, I would just steal it, you know, or try to help people steal it, or do whatever. And it quickly got me, you know, juvenile hall, foster home. Like, I started, you know, going up the security system very quickly. That's when I met Bob Shamrock, and it was the same thing. I was sitting in juvenile hall, and another guy came to interview me, and this guy was just totally different. You know, he was just no nonsense. I mean, he looked crazy, he had gold everywhere, and he looked like a rock star or something. And he just sat down, and I went to give him my spiel, and he just goes, nope, we don't do bullshit. And he just cut me off, and he's like, listen, this is what we do, we're men. And he like laid this thing out like a dad, and then he's like, if you come here, that's what'll happen. And then I was like, wow. And then he just left. I was like, wow, well, they're not gonna let me in there. And then, you know, my counselor came a few days later, and he's like, he accepted you, and he'll be here like in 2 days. And then from the moment he picked me up, you know, I was just like his son, and there was 20 boys, but he ran a big family in the Shamrock Boys Ranch. These were the bad kids. One more step and they were getting locked up in camp, or they were going to juvenile hall for, you know, or youth prison. And everybody was a son, and everybody was equal, and everybody worked hard, and he was the first father that I had that, you know, I listened to. And I loved him. I instantly fell in love with him. And, you know, I wanted to be good, and kind of, you know, I wanted him to be my dad, and to kind of, you know, grow into a man with him. And that's what I tried to do. Gave me some pep talks. It's like, I'm gonna give you the big dad advice. I was like, oh, I love it. Give it to me. And he said, you got 2 choices. You can be a great stripper, or be a great fighter. And just like that. And I was like, what? And then he followed up with, your brother did great at stripping, he made a ton of money. He told me the whole story. They toured the South, they got contracts. He's like, we made a ton of money, it was fantastic. And he's like, and this fighting thing's taking off too. And he's like, we're doing really good in the fighting thing. And he told me the whole opportunity there. Broke them out, just like they were 2, you know, job opportunities. I was like, well, you let me think about that. I knew I was never going to be a stripper. I knew I was going to choose the other one. And then the next day he dropped me off at the school, and the whole time he was kind of telling me about it, and oh, it's amazing, and this is my brother's new fighting school. And my dad is basically positioning it like it's a martial arts learning academy. It's basically just a hardcore fighting school. And then just dropped me off with the 2 statements. Don't show them you're scared, and don't give up. That was it. Give me the big hug. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I walked in, And then they just beat the living shit out of me. It's thoroughly designed to break you physically, mentally, and spiritually. That's all it's designed to do. It's nothing to do about fighting. So you do 500 squats, sit-ups, push-ups, and leg lifts. You exhaust your body completely. Then you get in and you fight a professional fighter for 20 minutes. And their whole job is just to take you to the very edge, choke you till you're almost unconscious, like beat you until you almost want to die to see if you're going to quit or not. And my brother did my tryout, and he didn't want me there. So he made an effort to get me to quit. The first minute, I thought, oh, I'm actually kind of competitive. and then he just blasted me with a right hand and just knocked me down. And then I was like, holy heck, because no one had ever knocked me down in a fight before, ever. And so I was like, wow. And then he just jumped on me and just started twisting me and bending my arm, tore my knees out. And I didn't know you couldn't tap, because I wasn't watching the sport evolve on television. I was in prison. So I didn't know that you could do this and it was over. So, he's put me in all these holes and just tearing them because he's expecting me to give up. But I don't know you can give up because no one's explained that to me. So at one point he's got my leg and he's like turning it and he's tearing my knee and I'm screaming, ah! And I hear one of the guys go, hey man, does he know he can tap? And I hear the other guy go, I don't know. Did anyone explain it to him? And so I'm hearing this conversation going, and I just start going, tap! I just start screaming tap, because I don't know you're supposed to tap the mat. That's maybe 7 or 8 minutes in, and it was 20 minutes. By the end, I was just crawling on all fours, and Ken was like riding me and just beating on me, and I was like bleeding. I mean, it was horrible. I thought I was gonna die. Honestly thought that I was gonna die in that tryout. And then, and they just left me there. Like, all right, you're in. And I was like, okay. I laid there for like an hour. And then after about a week and a half, I was, hobbling pretty good. 2 weeks, I was back in the gym. And I didn't give up. And then that time, in that day and age, as long as you didn't give up, you were in. You were a fighter. That was the first tournament in the Pancrase organization, which was one of the first hybrid MMA organizations. And that was their first tournament to pick a champion. And they had only been around for maybe 2 or 3 years. And so it was their first, create a champion kind of moment. And so I entered that tournament in my very first fights with my brother on the other side. So we both entered the tournament and both got invitations to it. But I ended up fighting Boss Rutan as my very first match. I didn't know who he was, to be honest with you. And I'd flown to Japan, I was living in the Japanese dojo, training every single day, nobody spoke English. But every time I told somebody who I was fighting, they would all look down. Like, why are they looking down? And then I quickly realized that he was a monster, and everyone was like, oh, you're gonna get killed. So, but when I told my mentors, Funaki and Suzuki, who I was fighting, they were like, oh, they pulled me aside and started showing me stuff. And they showed me how to stop the big kicks and take him down. And then Funaki showed me how to move quickly on the ground and use my balance and leverage. If they had not have showed me those 2 things, Boss would have just destroyed me, like literally destroyed me. The fight was 10 minutes. It went by for me in what seemed like a minute. Because everything happened so fast and everything, cycled through so quickly. And I just remember tiny segments. I remember cross-facing him really hard and him spitting a little bit of blood on me. And then I remember him kicking my face and breaking my nose off, like about 7 minutes in when I got tired. And then I remember us both having heel hooks on each other and thinking, I'm gonna break his leg and he's gonna break mine. And then I remember the bell rang. I had no idea if I'd won or lost, to be honest with you. And they announced that I'd won and I was just blown away. And instantly I was famous, like literally. And everybody changed their whole demeanor towards me. Everything changed. Before I was bag boy, beat boy. I was the guy they whooped on, and instantly I was, oh, Frank, here, let me get your bag for you. And it just the whole world changed the minute I won that fight, and including being adopted. Bob was, was always like, God, there's so much going on, and get your training done, and I think he was also waiting for me to take that moment, to go down that path. But it's like the minute it happened, it's like, all right, we got to get this adoption done. And like overnight, I was a Shamrock, and everything was, on track to me being like a superstar. Could not believe that I won. I'd run from so many things in my life, and this was the thing that, I did it, and I won. I definitely walked out of that ring a different person after the first fight. It was the dream I never went for. But the minute I started doing it, then it became a reality. You can do anything, truthfully. The hardest thing I think for a lot of people is, they want it all changed now. They want it to be, to feel better now, and it doesn't happen now. It's a slow, gradual, process, but that process is worth it, and the journey's worth it. As long as you don't give up, you always have a second chance to kind of move forward to it. You always have a second chance to step up to it. I think we give up long before we're close to the finish line. I think most people give up, 6 inches from the finish line, and then they beat themselves up forever about it. And it's like, there's only 6 more inches. When you apply your body to it, when you apply your mind to it, when you apply your spirit to it, then you make progress. Once you get behind something and you start getting momentum, you can really accomplish anything.